we're real honored to have you here, so please come up and take the stage.
Good evening. It's great to be with you. I was thinking recently that about the first time that I met Tom Fry. And, well, not the first time I met him, but the first time I worked with him, Tom asked me, and I had the intuitive good sense to bring in my friend Lois Todd, who's a really brilliant facilitator, for a group of people. You know, Tom likes prizes. He likes that whole idea, if you do a big prize, you can get people to get outside of their comfort zone and accomplish incredible things. So the example would be the guy that got the prize for sending a spaceship up. Which one was that, Tom? The X Prize, right? Got the rocket ship up, got $10 million. So Tom had the idea that we'd do a big $10 million prize for somebody who would transform conventional education. And I'll skip what happened during the day, except to say that it was like the Olympics, for the facilitator, it was like the Olympics of spear catching. And Tom had the great one-liner when we were debriefing it. He said, we just made one problem in creating this day to transform education. We invited educators. It was interesting. And it was a delight. It's great to be with you. I am better known for creating experiences than I am for public speaking. And so we're going to do a little bit of that tonight. I have two ways to introduce myself. One is the bio way. And I was thinking about this recently. Because I'm old, I've done a lot of things. And did you catch that? You get old enough, of course you've done a lot of things. But I've had the privilege and the honor of meeting and talking with 3 different presidents, with 2 kings, with the Emperor of Japan. I've rafted down the Amazon. I've spent a month on safari in Africa. I've created a bunch of companies. I retired for 13 years. So I've done a bunch of things that are really fun and exciting. I built the largest training company in Asia with 240 staff in 7 countries. So that's kind of the, that's the good news, right? I've also been married 4 times to 3 women. You can do the math, right? One of them twice, and it didn't work any better this second time. I've managed to lose somewhere between $30 and $50 million, depending on how you kind of look at it. I've had all of the adventures with my kids that you can imagine. So I've got this mixed life, probably like most of you. There are some things that we do in life that just work incredibly well, some things that don't work so well. What I've learned over the years is also captured in the name of one of my previous companies, ARC. And it's an acronym for Awareness, Responsibility, and Communication. And our training programs through the years have been built around those 3 concepts. And in thinking about what we might be able to do tonight, I thought we only have a limited time together, so I'd like to focus on just one piece of that, which is awareness. So in front of you, are you ready to play a little game? Relatively low threat, and we'll do a higher threat one later. So you've got a little piece of paper in front of you that has 5 numbers on it, right? If you don't have that, anybody need one of those and doesn't have it? Right in the back there, Karen, way back there. Or you can just use scrap paper instead of that one. So here's your assignment. Number 1, 5 simple questions. Number 1 is, what's your favorite movie? It could be from this week, and it could be from 20 years ago. Or in Pat's case, it could be from 40 years ago. 50 years ago. All right? Your favorite movie, whichever one comes to your mind most quickly. It's not something to spend a lot of time on. Second question, what's your favorite character in that movie? And you can put the character's name or the actor's name or just describe them in some way. This is, you don't have to be exact about this, as long as you just kind of describe the character. Your favorite character, the one you were attracted to in the movie. Third question, what was the issue, the problem, the dilemma that character faced in that movie? And you can't tell me there wasn't one, because if there wasn't a problem or a dilemma or an issue, there wasn't a movie, right? Fourth question, what was the quality of mind or heart or spirit that your character, your favorite character, brought into the movie such that that issue, that problem, that dilemma got solved? You know, was it perseverance? Was it love? Was it courage? Was it creativity? What was it that your character brought to the movie such that that problem got solved? You're quick. All right, now it gets to be really fun. Fifth question, what does all of that have to do with you? So forget about the movie now. Just look at what you wrote and write down what that has to do with you, with your life, with the issues that you face, with the way you see yourself, either in terms of kind of the hero's journey side of that, or maybe the shadow side of it. But how does all of that connect to you? Out of thousands and thousands of movies, you selected one. Out of tens of thousands of characters, you selected one. Out of all of the issues that characters might have faced, you selected one. And out of all of the ways those problems could have been solved, you selected one. So what's that about for you? And I'll give you a moment to do that. And if you're later participating in this via video, I'm going to suggest that you actually do this on your own. All right, we need a volunteer. Who's my volunteer? Let's hopefully, no, I'm not going to call on the harassment gang. Okay, we need for you to come down here. Are you okay coming down? Or can you do it from there? Do it from there and be loud. All right, what's your movie? Oh, and by the way, pay attention to what I'm doing, because in just a moment you're going to do what I'm doing right now, okay? So just pay a little bit of attention. It's pretty simple. All right, what's your movie? Return to Me. All right, and the character? The character is the dog. And the dog's issue was? Loss. L-O-S-S, loss. Very good, all right. And what was the quality of mind or heart or spirit that the dog brought into the movie such that that got handled? Truth and love. Very good. And now we get to the really good part. What's that got to do with you, your life, and where you are right now, where you want to go, where you've been, all of that? Trust in the heart connection. Is that something you aspire to, or is that something you model, or? It's something you believe in. Is it fully present in your life? All right. All right, you get the idea here of how to do the interview? Now, so in just a moment, we're going to ask you to find a partner, somebody that you did not know well before you came here tonight. And we've done this a bunch of times, so I can predict one thing that will happen, which is some of the partners who are clever will attempt to spend all of the time that we're going to allot to this on the first 4 questions. Now, why would they do that? So they don't have to talk about themselves, right? But the value's in the 5th question. So we're going to give you each 3 minutes for each partner to be interviewed. And the suggestion is that you get through the first 4 questions in 30 seconds so that you have 2.5 minutes to talk about the 5th one. Clear? All right, so find a partner, somebody you did not know well before you came here tonight, and I'll tell you when to begin. Go. All right, I mentioned that I believe that awareness is a really important part of success, whether it's personal or business. And a different way of talking about awareness is to say that the skill set that is effective is to develop a higher state of noticing, to really begin to notice what's happening in our lives. We live in a world, and we've created a world that is rife with distraction, right? With verbal distraction, with visual distraction, with sensory distraction of every type. So what we do to survive that is to begin not noticing. We develop a certain state of numbness to what's happening around us. It's the only way that our brains can kind of process things. And when we do that, we often kind of miss what's available for us, what's possible for us. So we're going to find out what you noticed in doing the exercise, all right? So who had something they noticed, either about themselves, about their partner, just about life in general, from doing this? Who's got one? What did you notice? So, what's the point of the little exercise, by the way? Now, nobody from the stage ever asks that kind of question if you don't already know the answer that you're looking for. And you're right, I'm looking for an answer. But what do you think? What's the point of doing this little exercise other than a fun way to kind of loosen things up and get to know each other? What's the point of it? Right, there's a greater awareness you can have about something as simple as a favorite movie, right? And who's the awareness about? Yeah. Who else? What's the point of the little exercise? And my experience is that all businesses have some similarities, and one of them is that the business is some kind of a game. You know, it's a marketing and a product and an advantage and a pricing, and it's all a game. And then the other part is you. In 2002, I ended my retirement in Aspen and moved to Denver. And in the office building that I was in on Blake Street, I was the only person not in the tech business. Remember, 2002? So by the time I moved here, they were struggling. And so I'd run into these guys at lunch and in the hallways and got to know a few of them a little bit. And I started to notice a pattern. And it was interesting. When the big options were out there, you know, the dream of getting rich, and the big contribution, the big vision was out there. These people worked together how? Were they effective or not effective? When the options were there, when the vision was there, they were pretty effective, right? But what happened when the options went underwater and the vision appeared to be unreachable? It was very interesting because all of their personal stuff came up and got dumped into the business. And there are literally thousands and tens of thousands of examples of people like almost literally going at each other's throats. There were fights that broke out in meeting rooms. There were angry screaming matches. There were people that went silent and sulked. All these terrible things happened once those two drivers were no longer present. And my conclusion out of that is they hadn't done the work on themselves and as a team and the big vision. Does this make sense? So something like this little exercise points out to me that you can tune up your level of awareness on your own by using movies, music, how you react to the people in your life. You're getting the idea here? Because the Zen part of this is that there's no movie out there. Do you kind of get that? You make it up. What you're attracted to, what you notice, what you could learn from is unique to you. Have you ever been in a movie or in a concert or in some kind of a situation where sitting next to you is somebody with tears running down their cheeks and you're going, what's going on? Or you're the person with the tears and suddenly embarrassed because the people sitting around you aren't crying? It's because there's no movie out there. It's all about us. So my suggestion to you is, and this is kind of like learning point number one here this evening and trying to leave you with something, is that going out into the world, you might not remember me and this presentation. What I'd like you to remember is the possibility that what you think is out there and that you're reacting to is a terrific teacher. And that's something you can leverage and build on for the rest of your life. Notice what it is that gets you angry. Notice what it is that gets you emotionally connected. Notice what it is that gets you confused. Because in all of those things, it's not about that thing out there. It's not about that person out there. In my seminars recently, I have begun noticing, there's that word again, that I've been talking a lot about my brother Sam. And I've really been working on this. Like, why am I always talking about Sam? Well, what I finally figured out is Sam is my mother. My mother's been dead for many years, but Sam mirrors her criticalness, her kind of negative twist on things. And what I'm realizing is that I thought I kind of left that behind years ago, but I didn't. And so Sam is this terrific teacher to me. And at any given moment, I hate it. But when I go away from the interaction, I go, oh, I've got more to learn about acceptance. I've got more to learn about getting off my judgment machine, calming it down, and actually learning something about life. So when you go out of here and go into your life a month from now and a year from now, my suggestion is to begin noticing what it is that you react to, positively or negatively, because that's where the learning is. That's where the awareness kick is. The second piece that I wanted to share about, and I could have kind of done this in the introduction to a new business. So here's a new business that I'm working on. It deals with affluent baby boomers. Now, P.T. Barnum said, some of you know this quote, "Nobody ever went broke underestimating the taste of the American people." Have you heard that before? He was talking about us, of course, right? Nobody ever went broke underestimating the taste of the American people. The corollary to that in our lifetimes has been nobody ever went broke targeting the baby boomers, right? They've influenced every marketing plan for years, and they're doing it now. So we're putting a business together that targets those people who are in the biggest transition of their lives and are poorly prepared for it. How many of you are graduates of LifeSpring or EST or Landmark or SciWorld or Insight or something? So about 10% or so, maybe a little more. One of the things you would get from that program is an enhanced ability to handle change. But most of these people that I'm talking about, the affluent baby boomers, have not been through one of those programs. And they're really struggling with how they're going to handle this huge transition in their life, where they're being voluntarily or involuntarily retired. Their net worth has taken a 20 to 40% hit in the last year and a half. So there's a lot of changes for them, right? Suddenly they're spending a lot of time with their wife or husband that they didn't spend before. Another big change. So what we see in terms of signs of problems are a marked increase in the use of legal and illegal drugs, as an example. We see a huge increase in suicide. I was glad to hear that someone's talking about that tonight. We see a huge increase in, listen to this one, online poker. You getting the pattern here? All of these distractions, all of these ways to go numb about the challenges that are facing this particular demographic group. I'm sure none of them are in this room tonight, so we can talk about them. So I want you to imagine something with me, and we'll see if we can do something that would be valuable for you at this point in your life in terms of handling change. So I'd like you to imagine it being a warm, beautiful midsummer day in East Hampton, New York. And how many of you have been to the Hamptons? You see your hands? Lots of people, good. You know, in the summers, it's just incredible, right? It's like Aspen by the ocean. And there's a middle-aged guy walking down the street. Got that in your imagination? And he's holding the hand of his 13-year-old daughter. And they've just finished a father-daughter day together. By the way, this is a true story. And they spent the day on the boat. It's just been wonderful. The weather's been great. The experience on the boat was great. And he's just so happy. So he begins to sing aloud. You can imagine that, right? And by the way, this is a true story. He's just so happy, he just bursts into song. What does the 13-year-old daughter do? Let's hear. One word. Groans. Groans. What else? Runs away. What else? Rolls her eyes. That was a good one. What else? Oh, yeah. Or, you know, plugs in the earbuds, right? Or, you know, all kinds of things, right? What she actually did, and this is pretty close to a direct quote, is she yelled at him. And she said, "Dad, stop it, you're embarrassing me." Now, can you imagine that scene so far? He's happy, the father-daughter day together. Oh, and they're on their way to get ice cream, which is the way they've ended their father-daughter days forever. And he sings, got all that picture? And she says, "Stop it, Dad, you're embarrassing me." So far, we can understand all of that, right? How did we know how that girl would react?
Because we have daughters.
We have daughters, we were daughters, you know. I'm going to Thank you. I'm going to suggest that it's because we know the identity of a 13-year-old girl, right? And that identity includes, it's pretty fragile. We're generalizing here, but for many of them, they're trying to kind of figure out who they are, and how their friends think of them has a lot to do with who they think they are, and all of that stuff, right? Okay, so we got that one. How does he react? How does he react?
With love.
With love. "Oh, I'm sorry, dear." He apologizes. "I don't want to embarrass you." Okay, that's one choice. What else? How about singing louder? That's Robert White. And my daughters gave me a bumper sticker. It's in my pantry. It says, "I embarrass my children." It's a true story. So what else? Other possibilities of how he would react. Yes? He could be sad, right? Feel hurt, right? He could be angry. What else? Oh, yeah, and why it's really okay, and we had this great day together, or whatever his story was. What he actually did, and remember, true story, was he got very angry and yelled at her. And that led to a more than 1 year estrangement from his daughter. Now, that's happened to me, by the way. Different setting, but my daughter, and I have 8 children, but the one that I am the closest to, of course, I got into it with her. She wouldn't talk to me for over a year. Well, she talked to me. You know the one-word answers? You know about one-word answers? That's worse than not talking. So she didn't talk to him for a year. He plugged himself into therapy, and thus this story came out in an interview. Now, I left one thing out of the story. The guy was Billy Joel. Even Billy Joel's singing is inadequate to a 13-year-old. So now, here's the kind of teaching point on this. How many of you were at the concert with Billy Joel and Elton John at the Pepsi Center? Anybody else other than me? Am I the only live music fan in the room? Apparently. You guys need to get out more. Let's give that piece of advice. So 18,000 people, and Billy Joel gets up there and commands the stage. So what kind of an identity does it take to get up in front of 18,000 people and do what he does? Pretty strong identity, right? The identity of I'm a big star. I don't know exactly what it was, but it's a pretty strong identity, whatever it is. And that's the identity that he had built in service to his career. Now, how did that work with his daughter? Because that's the identity that sources anger when somebody says, "Stop singing. You're embarrassing me," right? And so the point of all of this is that we all have an identity. I've had several in my lifetime, some pretty exciting, some less so, but we build up those identities because why? Why do we develop an identity? This is not complicated, by the way.
We're tired of the old one.
Well, we might take a new one because we're tired of the old one, that's right. But under all of them, what's the purpose of an identity? Yes? I'm sorry? Adjusting to change. Say more.
Well, we go through life learning, so you'll adapt your personality and adapt your life to that new structure. Moving from town to town, taking a new job, those kinds of things can change our
Yeah, so you develop different identities in different situations, or you can. I'd like to suggest that we develop our identities because they serve us. We don't have to stop and kind of think through a lot of different possibilities of who we are. Now, they're all false, by the way, unless you get to that kind of enlightened Eckhart Tolle kind of level, or, you know, the Tibetan monk. We put it on our identities like people put on a jacket. And so if your identity is, maybe for some of you right now, I'm a struggling entrepreneur, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? In our society, it actually sounds pretty good to say that. Or I'm a mom, and I'm a good mom. Or I've struggled through, like my case, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had some great successes and some great failures. So whatever our identity is, we adopt it because it serves us. At the same time that it serves us, and the Billy Joel example is a perfect one here, our identity limits us. So for 1 year, he was estranged from his daughter, the single most important relationship in his life, because he couldn't be anything other than the identity that he was living most of the time. So the suggestion that comes out of this is that there's value, if you'd like to take some value out of here tonight, is to sit down and write out your identity, literally. It's the I am statements. Who are you? What's the picture that you portray out in the world? And if you're having trouble with it, just go back over your last 20 conversations with people, and you'll get it. Now, years ago, I went to a seminar by a guy named Justin Sterling, and he did relationship seminars, and God knows I need relationship seminars. And so I went to his men's weekend. And in the early part of the men's weekend with Justin Sterling, he talks about sharing. You know, he says, you know, you have to put up your hand, I have to call on you, and then you have to introduce yourself, and here's how you have to introduce yourself. You have to say, my name is Robert White, and my bullshit is. So everybody goes, you know, what does that mean? And there's this big discussion about what that means. And the final answer, I will never forget, he said, it's the word you use to get laid. Right? That's your identity, by the way. So if you just listen to the conversations that you have with people, you'll find out what your identity is, because it's what you say to people. That, you know, whatever it is. And when you do that, just look at how it serves you, because it always will, and also how it limits you. And when you discover those two things, your awareness goes up and you can make better choices. Does that kind of make sense? So what we're talking about when we leave here today is increasing your ability to notice. One of my many former wives talks about developing an advanced state of noticing. To get to the point where all of the interactions in your life, everything that you read, everything that you hear, everything that you see, contributes to your own self-awareness. And in my experience with business, what happens is you get so busy doing the doing of the doing. Is this making sense to you that are doing a bunch of stuff? That you stop noticing. And particularly, you stop noticing you. You stop noticing what lights you up and what just shuts you down. You stop noticing or have a lessened sensitivity to the other people in your life or to what's going on in the world. And when that happens, I'm suggesting that you're going to be a lot less effective entrepreneur, a lot less effective business person, and for that matter, a lot less effective friend or a less effective parent, or all of the different roles that we play in life. So develop a higher state of noticing, and start noticing when you do that, that your life will begin to transform. I'm going to hang around later and sign books for anybody that wants one, and I look forward to meeting you personally and being with you. Thanks for your attention, for your participation, and be extraordinary. It's a choice you can make.
The amazing, interesting background of our panel here. And in the spirit of our elevator pitches, what we're going to do, instead of me to read this that you've read before, that's why you're here, is we're going to go through, not Robert, we know him, but we're going to go through our other guest panelists and let them, I won't get the bell out, but let them give you their 30-second, 1-minute elevator pitch. And we'll start over here on the left. Chevy?
An elevator pitch. Okay, well, I am standing up. My name is Chevy Chevillard. I'm a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and a conductor. I retired a few years ago as a commander of the Air Force Academy Band, former academic, and I followed my passion all the way through my Air Force career of making art in a uniform. And I knew that after I retired, I wanted to write and speak and teach and somehow make the connection I made of leadership from a conductor's perspective. I was a military commander for a lot of years, and somewhere along the way I figured out that there was a great similarity between the way I led on the podium and off the podium. And so my business is called Conduct Your Life, and that's what I do.
I'm Rhodey Kent. I am a presentation coach. I help people to empower themselves to be effective communicators. I work with entrepreneurs on improving and refining your elevator speech and any PowerPoint presentations you have. I also work with executives from Fortune 500 companies on their presentation and communication skills. And I've developed and teach a course for MBA students at Leeds Business School at CU Boulder on presenting themselves and job interviewing. I have a bit of a different slant from most business coaches. I've been in the film business for over 25 years as a casting director working on feature films and TV series. And when I work with a client, what I do is I use video playback. And I help them to see how they show up. What is their body language saying? Are they conveying what they intend? And if they don't, then I have exercises and techniques that we work on experientially. We sort of just work around it to find what works best for them to make any changes that might be necessary or just move to the next level in their presentations. Thanks.
That's good to know. My name is Lita Citroen, and I am the principal of a company called Lita 360, which is a turnkey marketing communications firm focused on brand. So I work with corporations, businesses, nonprofits, and individuals to articulate, develop, cultivate, and then market the heck out of really cool brands.
Open up the floor to questions, either for Robert or the panel. Depending on the question, we'll have everybody speak, or you can direct it to somebody individually. Everybody's always scared with the first question. Robert, do you want to start us off? I actually have a couple questions just about your book, Living an Extraordinary Life. So what's like 1 or 2 hot tips for stepping into that life you really want but might not be admitting you want? And we'll just go down the paddle while people formulate their questions.
Becca's so happy that I got thrown that. She's delighted. This made her entire evening. When the book came out in hardcover, you do all those radio interviews, and I found that there were 3 different responses with radio interviews. One is the interviewer that does not read the book, nor does the producer read the book. Nobody reads the book. You better have sent some good questions in advance, because otherwise the interview goes really badly. The second one, the producer or somebody reads the book and they provide some questions. And the third one, the interviewer, the DJ or whoever, the talk show guy or woman actually reads the book. And those were always the best interviews. And the single thing in the book that got commented on consistently by anybody that read it is a very simple 2-sentence piece that would, I think, respond to Allison's question, which is, life is simple. This does not mean it is easy. Life is simple. This does not mean it's easy. I think that somehow many of us have a deep underlying belief system first of all, that life is complicated when actually how to live an extraordinary life has been known forever. I think one of the things for anybody that's written a kind of self-help book that you realize is that there are only two original self-help books, the Bible and Think and Grow Rich. Every other book is derivative, including mine, which is, it takes you a while to get around to being able to say that, by the way, but it's true. And so the lessons of how to live very, very successfully are out there. They are not secret. But we have a belief, first of all, that we want to make it more complicated, and then secondly, we have a belief that it's supposed to be easy. And you know, the existentialists say that life is hard and then you die. It's true. Life's hard and then you die. So that, anyway, Allison, that might be the quickie answer. Life is simple. This does not mean it's easy.
That's great. Lita?
Well, in the work that I do, what I help businesses as well as individuals get to is that place of authenticity. And authenticity means humility. It means knowing what we're not good at, where we fell short, and what our strengths are. And when I talk about brand, whether it's for a company or an individual, it comes from that identity. So I define identity a little bit differently in brand. And then going forward with what really excites you. Because I find that when people are excited about what they do, whether it's an entrepreneur, whether it's a CEO of a large company, or if it's just an individual who's looking to find their place in the world, if you start with what you're truly passionate about, what really excites you, that's going to come across in your communication, in your marketing, in all of your external touch points. And also understanding who the audience is. Because a lot of us think, you know, my audience is everyone. You know, anyone with a pulse and a checkbook could buy my product or should find my message relevant. But that's not really true. And when you find and you do the work to understand who your audience is, then all of a sudden you've narrowed your focus down, which is a little risky, but you're talking to people who get you know, who laugh at your jokes and aren't turned off if you've got a loud personality and a bold, you know, a bold style. So really understanding that authenticity and marrying that with an understanding of the audience. You know, we're all looking for filters, as Robert talked about, with the vision. What is it that, you know, that you're meant to do? And, you know, my argument is I think that comes from the brand. It comes from what you're good at, who will find you relevant, and how to design a message that's compelling.
Rhody. Thank you.
What I find when I'm working with people, I want to say that I actually am borrowing from what both of you have said, that there are several aspects to this. I think the awareness is so important in what I do with someone. It's the awareness of how they are showing up and how they want to show up, and then being able to match the two, and that the authenticity comes in there. I've worked with actors for years and years, and some people have said, well, you can teach me how to act. And I don't teach people how to act at all. What I do is I help people find what their passion is and to be able to express it in a way that people can see it. Because so many people have a burning passion, but they're just too afraid to let it out. And they just shut down, and they are afraid to come out and be who they are. So I think it's many things. It's the awareness, it's the willingness to really put yourself out there, and the willingness to go inside and find what is important and what is passionate for you. And then to be willing to show up and show it. And I think that's what I find is important.
There's nothing left for me to say. But that's true. In my case, I dug down deep for a long time to figure out, well, what was it that I knew that might be of value to someone else? There are a lot of products that are sold that are nobody buys them, right? But they're a good idea. And one thing I learned in the writing business, if you're going to write an article for publication, you better find out if there's a need for that topic, and you better know something about that publication so you can write to fill the need. So in my case, I wondered, well, what is it that I know about leadership and conducting that might be of value to others? I'm still exploring that, by the way, but what Robert said about ARC, I mean, I can relate just about anything to the world of music and sitting inside an orchestra or in front of one. Awareness, you better be aware if you're in an orchestra, and you better really be aware if you're the guy up there with the most, or lady, with the most dangerous instrument, which is the baton. Responsibility, there's lots of responsibility on both sides of the stick. I have to be prepared. I have to have the vision of what the music's going to sound like before I step on the podium. But the players also have to be responsible, and we share that responsibility. Because one thing I learned early on as a conductor is never forget, maestro, who makes the sounds. So it's all about sharing that responsibility and communication. Well, the music is a marvelous way to get beyond the mind to the heart. We were talking about why do people cry for Puccini, and someone next to them listens to a beautiful Puccini aria, and it's nothing because it's the song that their mother sang, and they didn't like their mother. And Sarah Palin stole my line, by the way, because she said, you know, what's the difference? Something about something and pit bulls. Well, sopranos and pit bulls, difference is lipstick. That's the difference. So my take on it is whatever your passion is, dig down deep and find it. That's an old saying, isn't it? But once you find it, then you've got to be tenacious about it, and you've got to be absolutely aware of the possibilities out there. In my case, I've been trying to fill my mind with useful knowledge for years about how to start a business and what it is that relates to conducting and leadership that I don't know that I could add. And I added 3 things tonight. ARC. Thank you.
And speaking about ARC, so awareness, responsibility, and communication?
Yes.
Is that correct? So I have a question for Rhodey on that. So if you're so if you have the awareness, right, and you get responsible for it, and now you start communicating it. So let's talk about this word transparency and how important that is. Because if you just come up as, you know, as a presenter, if you're not really being authentic and you're not willing to have whatever emotion it is be there, or whoever you really are be there, does it land well?
It's interesting when we talk about authenticity. It's not, it's being honest, but also authenticity means do your vocal, whatever you're saying, your content, does it match your vocal intonation and your facial expression? For instance, if I was to say, I'm really excited to be here, it doesn't match, so it's not authentic. There's something missing. But if I were to say, I am really excited to be here, then it sort of goes together. So that is, you're right, there's a transparency of being able to know yourself enough that you can, you know, let go of some of that veneer that we put on to protect ourselves, of really finding what the passion is and being a little more you know, you have to step outside. For some people it's easier, but for some people you really have to step outside that comfort zone to really, first of all, connect and know what you're passionate about, and then really let us see it and know that you're connecting somehow to that passion. And that's when people
think we're not transparent, maybe?
Huh?
I think we think we're not transparent. I think people believe that we're not transparent, so we say, I'm really excited to be here. Like nobody's picking up on it.
Right, right. And they do. It comes out sideways anyway, so you might as well be straight with it. Yeah, does that answer what you're saying?
And I think that's a lot of the awareness training. How many people here were comfortable when Robert asked you to share the 5 questions with your neighbor? How many people were 100% comfortable, didn't get a quick little glitch? I mean, we all got, see, not everybody. Because we're just not trained that it's okay to go share deep, dark secrets with people you don't know. And that's part of that getting comfortable. If you're going to live this extraordinary life, wouldn't you agree you got to get really comfortable with everything that's in the room?
Of course, Allison.
And you're really good at that, aren't you? All right,
but
so who has a question
I must
now?
say, though, there's one little thing about that transparency thing, though. It goes to a point, but you do want to maintain some boundaries as well, and it's learning that discernment, because you don't want to. I had a client recently that was, I was videotaping him in a meeting, a huge meeting, and it was great because he was really connecting with the people, and at one point someone said, well, gosh, aren't you tired, all the work you're doing? And he said, Ambien is my friend. And these are all people who work for him. And I shared with them later that was maybe being a little too transparent. Maybe everyone that works for him doesn't need to know that Ambien is his friend. so there is also, you don't want to be just totally transparent at all times.
David?
Okay, one of the things I've noticed with the economy is that accountability, substance, and integrity was definitely lacking. And I was wondering if you feel that we've learned our lesson, or are we still repeating the same path now that things have started to turn around somewhat?
In the work that I do, there's only one formula to build credibility that I know of, and I have yet to be challenged. And that is to articulate your values and act consistently. I mean, that's how you build integrity, that's how you build credibility. I tell you that this is important to me. I tell you that responsiveness is one of my key values. If I don't return my clients' phone calls, if I don't get back to them, I lose credibility. Likewise, if I don't tell you what I stand for, but I'm just a heck of a nice person, I don't get credit for it. And in branding, we want to get credit for what we're good at, whether we're a business or we're an individual, because we're setting the expectation of the experience. So in positioning for the turnaround, I think what the threshold is going to be set higher. And I even think during this blip, whatever you want to call it, recession that we've had, companies have really pulled back and said, what is it? What claims can we make? If we're going to put those values on our website, if we're going to have those mission statements on our business cards, are we really living up to that? Because we're setting an expectation of an experience. Whether you have a product, a service, a site, whatever your business is, people act on logic, but they buy on emotion. And in branding work, we set an emotional expectation. One of my clients is here today, and he represents a water purification system. Okay, that's a product. But his brand is tied to an emotional connection that homeowners who care about their families are going to have with that product. That's what I think is going to come out of this turnaround, is we're going to see more authenticity in brands. The FTC has just set new guidelines for what we can say in testimonials. And for all of you businesses out there, I would say, you know, we're going to be looking for credibility, which means walk the talk. Tell us what you stand for, what you'll fight for, and what your business is about, what problems you'll solve. But then show us how you're doing that. That's how you build credibility. I don't think it goes that far, and I am very blessed to be able to say I have not been part of brands that weren't authentic. And I don't know if that was somehow my good fortune or the universe lining up or whatever. Maybe it was my own brand filter, but I have not been part of brands that were not authentic. And I actually have an article on my website that talks about, you know, if it's not based in authenticity, it's just marketing. Because quite honestly, we can market anything. And I was sharing that, you know, I don't work with celebrities and I don't work with politicians because what I do is rooted in authenticity. And I don't even know how to go there. I don't know that we woke up and all of a sudden we're seeing something that wasn't there before. I just think when things get really lean, we start looking for transparency and we start looking for people to put their money where their mouth is. And the internet, oh my gosh, the internet opened a level of transparency and authenticity that we could never have predicted. And a lot of the work I do is in social media because you can't bluff there. You can't bluff in social networking. It's got to be transparent or the universe will call it out.
I would have a, I wouldn't want to disagree with Lita because I have a feeling she would steamroller me. Oh. But she's pretty certain, right, about everything that she says, and that's great and engaging. I look at it a little bit differently. I think there's, and it's really that second letter in my former company's name, responsibility. I think inherent in your question is a certain level of victimhood, that we think that they did it, and I'm going to suggest that we all did it. We colluded in the last 30 years in not being educated about personal responsibility. And so those people that are now making those decisions in companies and in government and in the media that have a huge impact on our lives, they missed an aspect of education that was present in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. But they didn't get that aspect of education, which is about personal responsibility and consequences. And that includes all of us. I'm on the hook too. I rent a home in Wisconsin each summer for my children and grandchildren, and I spend a couple weeks there. And I ended up in, and maybe some of you have done this, I ended up in an argument with my son, who I love dearly, that was kind of politics and kind of healthcare and kind of a lot of different things. And when I walked, and then I ended it. You know, you have that choice, right, as a parent or as a mature person, which is to just get out of it because you know there's no good end coming. And I did end it, but I went for a walk along the lake later and I thought about it and I thought, you know, in some ways I think I've been a pretty good parent but I missed that aspect of his education. I didn't do the thing that I'm teaching out there in the world to so many people. I didn't teach to my own son. But in the 60s, we had a revolution, right? Some of us kind of remember that. Some of us were in a different state where we can't remember it. And we threw out a lot of old structures that weren't working anymore. And my suggestion is that we didn't replace them with new structures that did work. So the example would be that we made religion wrong, as an example. But we didn't replace it in terms of values and moral standards. We made big business wrong back then, and yet we continued to fly around on airplanes that were not made by Fred and Gertrude's garage. They were made by Boeing, by a huge corporation. And somehow we lost an appreciation for all of that. So it's the Gordian knot. But the way I kind of simplify things for myself is how did I create that? And how did the people in my world create that? Because we own it all. We own the behavior of large corporations. The New York Times has a huge staff of people that report on economics every day. Did they miss a bit, folks? And we didn't hold them to account. We blamed the companies, not the people that were reporting on them. And it goes on and on like that. So I think that if we're learning anything from what's been happening in the last couple of years, it's to begin to own it again, all of it.
I'd like to put that a little different way. There's an old saw in show business: never read your press clippings, because it's the beginning of your end. And whether people didn't know right from wrong, what could they get away with? And that's what happens to artists. They get a great review and they say, well, I guess I've got this role nailed, and then they stop working. And they stop holding themselves to a higher standard. So I think it's a combination of forgetting what's right, maybe not knowing. I think we were all taught what's right and wrong at some age. Don't put your hand on the stove, Bobby, or you're going to burn your hand. I mean, we had to learn those lessons the hard way. But then we forgot, and we got away with it, so we stretched a little bit more, and next thing you know, we're where we were.
Well, this kind of room would kind of attract people that think like that, fortunately, I think. We are the glass half full crowd, right? But, you mentioned rhythm, and there is, I think, in the greater culture, a denial of the rhythm of life. Things go up and down. We've been here before, folks, and the question is, what are we going to learn from it? I don't think we learned very much from the dot-com crash, frankly. We just kind of sailed on past it.
So let me ask the question. A lot of what you're discussing here is about learning and understanding. I'd like to put that in the context of higher education and higher education today, and talking about Robert's topic of failed structures here, and the ones that should have gotten replaced that didn't. How do we, all the stuff that we're having to learn to kind of rethink our lives is having to be done outside of higher education, and yet that's kind of the major force in society that's driving things forward, is the higher education world, and everybody's talking about that. So I'm trying to rationalize that in my mind. How do we put all these pieces together about higher education when the stuff that we really need to learn is outside of that?
Well, we've got a couple of people in the audience today that know more about this, I think, than the four of us combined, by the way, sitting right over there. There's amazing stuff happening out there, Tom. That's what I observe. I went to an entrepreneur course, and Paul Bauer also went to it recently, at Babson College in Boston, and I was absolutely amazed at how close to real life they're teaching entrepreneurship. And I haven't seen that before. I think that Daniels College, where Paul is a professor, they're doing some good things there. I mean, finally, they're really doing some good stuff. Pat, you know, people are starting to listen to you talk about actually getting results with education, right? So I think some good things are happening. And maybe I'm being the glass half full guy here. But I think in higher education, some good things are happening. My concern is down lower in elementary and secondary education. I don't see much movement there.
I think there's more passion. There's more passion today. I work with a lot of companies who are talking about passion. They're talking about what moves them. And yes, the money has to be there because they always say, but we're not a nonprofit. Don't forget that, Lita, we're not a nonprofit. And I work with a lot of executives, and some of these are really accomplished. I mean, I work with clients all over the country, and these are people who've had their pictures on the pages of, you know, a cover of Forbes magazine, or I work with a gentleman who is a leader in education out of the East Coast who, I mean, is a household name in his field. And what he's talking about is the passion of why he does what he does. He's built this enormous company. His product is in every school in 50 states. And what he focuses on is, I want people to know why I'm passionate about this, why it moves me, why they could get passionate, why they could get excited. Because when people get excited, options show up, you know, and possibility. And yeah, you got to know your limitations. If you're passionate about something you're not credible in, get credible, you know, build some credibility, get training, get education, communicate. But it's a sense of passion, and I tend to attract clients who are passionate because I tend to be passionate about what I do. But I'm finding it more and more in just the people that I meet in functions like this, that there's this sense of, you know what, gosh darn it, what are all those people out there who say they love what they do for a living? What did they figure out? Because I want some of that too. And that was my own journey, is I woke up after you know, another job change where I had the fancy title and the fancy, you know, per diem and the expense accounts and all that, and I just wasn't passionate. I wasn't passionate about what I did. And when I started making my own list and going through my own brand promise and what I was about, all of a sudden it was like, whoa, you mean I get to get paid for this and people are going to hire me and take what I say and do something with it? I mean, all of a sudden I became really passionate. So I'm fortunate that I get to do a lot of public speaking on the topic and helping other people learn that. And it's a gift, it's a power, it's something I love to see people light up. So I would say my hope is passion.
Oh, did you have a question for her?
She was, what?
Okay. Just quickly addressing what you said, and I'll say what my hope is. I think that is a terrific thought. That, to me, communication is about connection. And the way you connect really to another human being is through emotion. So if, as entrepreneurs, you can really, in a passionate way, let people see that, they will connect to you and they'll feel that enthusiasm themselves. So I definitely think that's a great idea. But also besides that, my hope that I see is more awareness. I see more and more people wanting to be more aware of themselves and what's going on. I think, and I do think higher education, CU hired me. I was doing some just individual coaching with a few students, and the Ivy League schools all have programs on teaching their students how to present and how to interview for jobs once they've had this expensive education. And CU wanted to do this, which I thought was promising because so many schools don't have any kind of program like that. So I think, again, that awareness of what is needed to propel people forward is, I think, is very exciting.
I've got two hopes and one concern. The first hope is I've had a chance to work with, I conducted a youth orchestra last year, and I've got a couple of kids that are millennial generation, and they are so turned on by a cause. They care more about doing something meaningful with their life than they do making money. And I get kind of jaded as a boomer about that. Yeah, well, you'll get over that, I think, sometimes. But I can see it in their eyes, and I can hear it in their voice. So I think that's a hope. The other thing that I think is a great hope is the greatest library in the world accessed through Google or Yahoo, whatever. I mean, the amount of information that we can access now, the amount of knowledge that we can easily access, and the amount of people through social networking. I'm finding people that I had lost and thought I'd never find again through that. So there's a lot of, I'm optimistic about the connectivity factor. My concern is that that relies on computers, and those kids and those people who are below the line and don't have access to that technology are going to be so marginalized in this world. And I have a great concern about that.
So we are at time. Our panelists will be up here, and you can come up and ask questions. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much for being here.